everybody. So today is Sunday, January 17th. Before we start our public meeting today, we would like to just remind everybody who hasn't seen it in our social medias that starting tomorrow, Monday the 18th, we're going to have a new activity right after our public meetings. So just a reminder, our public meetings on Mondays are in Portuguese from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then starting at 8 p.m. we're going to have a new activity, and it's going to be in Portuguese, called Encontros à Luz do Evangelho de Jesus. They're going to be simple half-hour meetings where we're going to do some reflections on a text from Emmanuel, and then also a small passage from the Gospel according to Spiritism. So it's going to be via Zoom. So since we've been so far away from each other during this pandemic, anybody who's having a good hair day can turn on their cameras and we can see each other. If you don't want to turn on your camera, no problem, but everybody can participate. And we invite everybody to come join us tomorrow for the first one. All right, so we're gonna get started today's public meeting with a harmonization text from the book Living Spring, and it's text number 44, called Let Us Have Faith. I go to prepare a place for you. Jesus in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 2. The Master knew that until his divine kingdom was built on earth, all those who followed him could be seen as misplaced people, working for everyone's moral progress, but without a proper place for their sublime ideals. In fact, loyal Christians are seldom treated with due respect, no matter where they go. Since they are almost always out of step with partially Christianized society, they have to endure the uncharitable opinions of many. If they practice humility, they are called cowards. If they adopt a simple life, they are called unambitious. If they try to be benevolent, they are labeled as fools. If they administer worthily, they are judged as proud. If they obey when it's right to do so, they are considered servile. If they apply tolerance, they are seen as incompetent. If they show firmness, they are cruel. If they work industriously, they are seen as vain. If they strive for self-improvement, assuming responsibilities in an intensive effort to do good works or to engage in consoling conversations, people think they are just pretending. If they try to help their neighbor, approaching the multitude with gestures of spontaneous goodness, they are accused of being egocentric and opportunist, seeking their own interests. But in spite of such conflicts, let us continue working and serving in the name of the Lord, recognizing that the home of his followers is not built on the soil of the world. Jesus promised to prepare a place for them in the higher realms. Therefore, let us double our efforts at sowing the good as laborers who are temporarily distant from their true home. In my Father's house there are many mansions, and Christ keeps on serving ahead of us. Let us have faith. So let us do our initial prayer. I invite everybody to close our eyes, to take a deep breath, and try to concentrate our thoughts. Try to elevate our thoughts to our Father, who loves us unconditionally. Let's raise our thoughts to Jesus, our older brother and master, who came to earth to show us the path, to exemplify how it's done. Let us fill our hearts with gratitude for all the opportunities that we have to learn, to apply what we learn, all the opportunities we have to strengthen our virtues, including our faith. Let us thank our Father for always being with us, for always supporting us, even when we don't realize it. Let us thank our guardian angels for being by our side from the moment we're born to the moment we breathe our last. Let us be thankful for the divine providence that gives us everything we need in this life in order to evolve. And we ask you, Father, for strength to face those challenges, and in our own turn, strengthen our faith in ourselves, in life, and in you. So be it. Okay. Hi. All right, so okay. So today we're going January, as most people know, we try to focus on a virtue every month, and for the month of January, the virtue is faith. Soninha spoke about faith last Monday, and I'm gonna follow suit. So, the power of faith. What is the influence of faith in my life? Maybe it would be easier if we try and reflect the other way around. Maybe it would be easier if we reflect on the lack of faith. We start with lack so that we can understand what happens when we don't have it as opposed to when we have it. So, what does lack of faith can cause to us? What does lack of faith can bring us? A feeling of emptiness, existential emptiness, not just emptiness in one particular area, but existential emptiness. The feeling that, what am I doing here? What's the purpose of all this? Why? Why are we here? Existential doubt. Am I worth it? Like, what does my existence mean? Would it make any difference if I weren't here? For myself, for my family, for the workplace, for the universe. Would anybody miss me if I completely disappeared? We start doubting the value of our existence. Existential insecurity. I don't feel secure in anything I do because connected to the existential doubt and the existential emptiness, if I have no idea what I'm doing here, why I'm here, if my existence is meaningful in any possible way or to anybody, I will have all these insecurities, because how can I be self-assured when I don't even know why I'm here or if my existence makes any difference to anybody? And it leads to fear. So lack of faith leads us to fear. So what can happen with those feelings? Fear can be objective and can also be imaginary. So when we talk about, fear is gonna be the last one on my list, but since I started with fear can be objective or it can also be imaginary. An objective fear is fear of something concrete. For us who live here almost in the North Pole, it can be the fear of being cold, the fear of freezing to death if something happens to our heating or something like this. Fear of death, because it will come whether we want it or not. So it is something concrete in that sense. Fear of becoming sick, fear of becoming weak physically or morally. So these are all objective fears. And there's also imaginary fears. So there's no psychological base for the fear. The objective fears, there is something concrete, but imaginary fears are fear of the unknown. Anything that I don't know, I'm gonna fear. Because again, I have that existential insecurity. So I'm gonna start fearing everything. And these fears, these imaginary fears, can lead to things that we see so commonly nowadays, like syndrome of panic attacks. Like all those are mostly, not always, but mostly based on imaginary fears. They are fears of things that we don't even know. A lot of phobias are imaginary fears. So other feelings that these feelings can also lead to depression, fear syndromes or phobias, anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia, all based on this existential emptiness, existential doubt. And where do all these come from? Where do all these feelings come from? In order to analyze these fears, we're going to say, oh, by the way, this was based on material from Projeto Spiritizar from Mato Grosso, and it's mostly based on a book called Energia dos Chakras, O Poder da Fé, Oração e Meditação. On a free translation, it hasn't been officially translated into English, but it would be the energy of the chakras, the power of faith, prayer, and meditation, thank you. I remembered in Portuguese and English, I blanked. And in this book, there's something called a koan. A koan is like a narrative, can be a dialogue, a story, that contains something that defies reason. Something like a fable is usually animals in place of humans. A koan is like a story, a narrative, that has what could be considered absurd items, facts, absurd things in it, things that normally wouldn't make sense, would defy reason. And according to Eastern tradition, koans are mostly Eastern based. According to Eastern tradition, koans usually aim at providing illumination, teach us something. Just like fables usually have a moral, koans are the same. The aim is to teach us something. And this koan is in that book, so again, it's a free translation because it hasn't been translated officially. So we're going to see, it's a little story, and we're going to use the elements in the story to understand those feelings of existential emptiness, existential doubt, and then connect it to faith. So let's get started. Once there was a small leaf that was feeling out of place. It believed that its place was neither on the twig, galho, nor on the branch, or even on the trunk where it was. And it decided to leave. detaching itself from the big tree. It fell on the ground, and the wind that takes everything took it far away from its origin. It faced the gravel and ended up falling in the waters of a creek. A creek is a small river, very small river. In its stream, it was taken aimlessly, not knowing for sure where it was going, tripping over rocks, trunks, and following its destiny completely disoriented. Then came the rain. The burning sun came as well, and the inclement weather made the little leaf very tired and withered. Withered is... I can't speak any other language anymore. Withered is when it dries up. It would ask to get out of the stream. So this, it would ask, we can say it as it was thinking in its mind again. So a koan doesn't necessarily have it has some elements that are out of reality. So the leaf would think constantly that it wanted to get out of the stream. It was asking and begging when a farmer who was passing by the river felt compassion for the little leaf. So again, absurd that the farmer would even read the leaf's thoughts. But again, it's just to teach us something, just to illuminate us. So the farmer felt compassion for the little leaf. Seeing it at the mercy of the stream, he took it and put it with the other leaves around the trunk of a beautiful tree to fertilize it. At this moment, the leaf felt connected to the original plan again. Only some time later, the nutrients of this little leaf traveled to a new trunk in a new branch and became a leaf again. But instead of trying to get away again, it preferred to stay and accompany the fruit that would arrive in the spring. So, in this case, what was the problem with the leaf? How did the leaf feel? I have Luis here with me doing the technological part, so Luis, if you want to answer, go ahead. If not, I can ask and answer myself.
It felt that it didn't belong.
Exactly. It felt it didn't belong. It felt out of place. What am I doing here? So again, the existential doubt. I don't think I belong in the branch. I don't think I belong in the twig. I don't think I belong in the trunk. So I want to go and find my place in the universe. And then it just left. Because again, existential insecurity, existential doubt, existential emptiness. Would anybody miss me if I weren't here? And why did the leaf detach itself from the tree? Why did it simply leave? And the answer is the silliest that we can think of. Because it could. And again, we're talking about the law of free will. It could detach itself, and it did. As simple as that. We can do whatever we choose to do. And conditions permit, of course. And then what happens? At what point did the leaf realize that it made a mistake? So what happens is, sometimes we make a decision that we can make based on the law of freedom. So I do it because I can. But again, with the law of freedom comes the law of responsibility and the law of cause and effect. Sometimes we make decisions and we take actions in our lives that we can't necessarily control the outcome. So the leaf could detach itself, and it did. Perfect. However, after that, it was at the mercy of the weather. It was at the mercy of the climate. So first came the wind and took it to the river, and the leaf couldn't do anything. It was simply an effect of the cause. The cause is that it detached itself. The effect, now the leaf couldn't control the wind. So the wind took the leaf to the river. And then came the rain, and then came the sun, and the leaf started to become dried up, withered. So those are all consequences of that initial decision that the leaf made, right? And then at what point did the leaf realize that it made a mistake? After a lot of suffering. After being at the mercy of the climate. After being rained on, winded upon, withered by the sun. After all that, it started asking to be taken away from that river. It didn't want to just go on aimlessly. Because in the beginning it says that it started to follow the river aimlessly. So again, that feeling of existential emptiness, existential doubt, existential insecurity, we don't know what we're doing here. We don't have an objective. So we are just going with the river like the leaf, aimlessly. We don't have an objective to get to because we don't know what we're doing here. We don't believe that we are in the right place with the right people at the right time. So that gives us that feeling of insecurity, and we're just let the river or life throw us or push us without an objective, without any kind of control. So after going through all those things that were a consequence of the initial decision the leaf made to detach itself from the tree, it started asking, begging to be taken away from the river. So this koan refers to a movement that is common with many of us. And to some of us throughout our lives in different moments, to some of us at some specific moments in our lives until we find ourselves, like with help, the leaf found itself again. Some of us go throughout our whole lives from birth to the physical death, making those decisions, wanting to detach ourselves from the divine love when we give way to pride and rebellion. If we think about the leaf again, it detached itself because it could. So the moment we make that rebellious decision of I do what I want because I can, making that decision, we feel like we have the power. So it's the pride, and again this is, oops, sorry, if there is a continuation, but this is from the book, The Energy of the Chakras. And this is Alírio de Cerqueira Filho. These are his words on the free translation. So the pride Alírio is talking about is that decision that I make because I can. But again, after that, I have to bear with the consequences. I have to bear with all the effects of the cause of the decision I made. So it happens to I think I can say it happens, I don't want to say all because it's like hard rules. I don't like hard rules very much, but let's say most. At some moment in our lives, our pride leads us to make a decision that is based on our pride, that we don't want to investigate further. We don't want to reflect. We don't want to look around. At a certain moment, we just rebel and we say, I've had enough. I'm not going to take anymore. I will do this because I don't want it anymore. Without further reflection, without trying to comprehend the whole, the big picture. So Alírio continues saying, however, when we are disconnected, we start to feel abandoned, like the leaf was at the mercy of the weather. We weather several storms, we go through several storms of fear and insecurity until we connect to the Father through prayer, humbling our pride and taming is calming our rebellion, reconnecting ourselves with God. So I think we can see that moment clearly. I didn't want to use the word prayer before because I was waiting for this part. So when the leaf starts thinking strongly, asking, begging to be taken out of the river, even if we don't call it prayer, that's a prayer. That request from our heart, from our soul, asking for relief. Some of us call something else. Most of us can understand that it is a prayer. It's a cry for help. So only when we reconnect, and again, the koan is like a brief story, is just a picture. If we think of a reincarnation as a movie, we're going to go through these moments how many times during our reincarnations, like a pendulum, feeling disconnected, hopefully connecting again. And it's not because you connected once that you're never going to feel disconnected again. It takes us, just like every virtue, faith is a virtue, and just like every virtue, it takes us a long time to truly develop that virtue. It's an exercise. It's like a building up of the virtue. So only when we reconnect again, and again, it's usually through prayer, because when the moment comes that we're so tired of suffering, of feeling pain, that we start asking, begging God, the universe, Buddha, any belief that we have, when we start to truly pray and reconnect with the divine, then that's the moment when we humble our pride, because we are in so much need of relief that it is the moment to humble our pride and say, okay, I made a mistake. Somebody help me get to a better place. And we're going to talk about who that farmer is. In the analogy, we're going to talk about who that farmer is. So the problem is, we don't always know that it was our pride. We don't always know that we need to reconnect. We don't always have that vision. And again, that's why some of us in this existence or previous existences, that's why some of us go throughout our whole life, thinking of a single existence, making those rebellious decisions, like from beginning to end. Why? Sometimes we think, but isn't the person tired of suffering? Why does the person keep doing that? Because sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we have no idea that that's what we're doing, that we are caught in that vicious cycle. In order not to feel abandoned, we are invited to connect with God. And usually in our moments of deepest desperation, it is usually through prayer that we do that. If we are disconnected from Him, we feel abandoned, even though in reality, He never withdraws Himself from us. We want to disconnect, but God never disconnects from us. Sometimes we believe we are disconnected. Sometimes we deny God, but He's always there. He doesn't disconnect. We do, He doesn't. So it's our lack of knowledge of the divine laws, natural laws, laws of the universe, the truth, any way we want to call it, that causes this disconnection and leads us to fear. Because again, Most of the time we make mistakes, not always, but most of the time is due to lack of knowledge. But if we know and understand the divine laws, it's a lot easier to make the right decision. Sometimes even knowing the laws, we still make the wrong decision, aware that we are making a wrong decision. And again, the law of freedom allows us to do that. But understanding, knowing the laws will help us, let's say, at least make fewer of those mistakes. So, like I said, this is a Lírio de Cerqueira Filho's words from the book Energia dos Chakras e o Poder Terapêutico da Fé, Meditação e Oração. So, let us reflect on something. And again, all these small reflections are going to lead us to the influence of faith in our lives, even though I'm sure everybody has made the connection already. But are we abandoned? And we just said that. And of course the answer is no. No, we are not. We disconnect ourselves from God. Like the whole pride, the whole rebellion, I do what I want. And we can make the analogy with our parents at a certain point. I don't want to listen to my mom. I don't want to listen to my dad. What do they know? They're old. They know nothing. I make my own decisions. My life. So it's a similar idea when it comes to God. I will do what I want. And again, I can try and push God away and say, I don't want to listen to the divine laws you created. I don't want to listen to the laws that rule the whole universe. I want to be an exception because I'm special, I'm different. We can do that. But God is all loving and He never disconnects from us. So we are not abandoned. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, Chapter 5, item 19, the item is called Evil and Its Remedy, St. Augustine says, what remedy can be prescribed for those, remedy is medicine similar to Portuguese, to those attacked by cruel obsessions and mortifying evils? There is but one infallible way, through faith, which is the appeal to heaven. Appeal is request. So we are requesting help from heaven. If at the moment of highest poignancy is extreme sadness or regret, like a very deep feeling of sadness or regret. So if at the highest poignancy in your suffering, like the leaf in the river asking and begging to be taken out of the river, you intone hymns to the Lord. Intone is sing. So if in the moments of your highest regret or sadness, you sing hymns to the Lord, we're going to come back to this bolded part and connect to the koan. Then the angel at your bedside will show you the sign of salvation and the place which you will one day occupy. And this connects to the text we read in the beginning, that Jesus says He's preparing a place for us. Faith is the one sure remedy for suffering. It will always show the infinite horizon before which the few cloudy days of the present will vanish. Therefore, do not ask what is the remedy for ulcer or sore, sore é ferida, temptation or trial. Remind yourselves that those who believe are strengthened through the remedy of faith. And those who doubt of its sufficiency, be it even for an instant, will be immediately punished because they will quickly feel the pungent is sharp, the pungent anguishes of affliction. So let's go back to the beginning. So when St. Augustine says that if at the highest poignancy or sadness in your suffering, you intone hymns to the Lord. So connecting back to the koan, at what time, at what point was the little leaf intoning hymns to the Lord? When it was praying, when it was asking and begging to be taken out of the river. Then the angel at your bedside. In the koan, who was the angel at the little leaf's bedside that showed the leaf a sign of salvation, that took the leaf to the place that it should occupy? In the koan, it was the farmer. And the farmer would be a symbol for what entity in our lives? Luis talks about that all the time. Our guardian angels, who are with us from the moment we are born to the moment we take our last breath. So our guardian angels, or the farmer in the koan, they are here to help us, to guide us, when we allow them to. Because sometimes we rebel and we say, I know what I'm doing. I don't need anybody's help. I got this. We wish. So the angel at our bedside is our guardian angel. Not only because, as we, or some of us, or most of us know, we don't have, our guardian angels are with us, assigned to us before we were born, to the moment we breathe our last. But we don't have only our guardian angels. There are other good spirits who help us, our families. If we are connected to a Spiritist center, the Spiritist center, workplace, there are groups of superior, of good spirits supporting us in many different settings of our lives, in many different situations of our lives. Our guardian angel is there with us when we allow them to be, of course, because sometimes we also push our guardian angels away. But the moment we ask for help, they will never deny us help. But there are other friendly spirits connected to us that will also help us. Again, when we allow them to, when we don't push them away with our pride and our rebellion. And then he says, faith is the only sure remedy for suffering. It will always show the infinite horizon before which the few cloudy days of the present will vanish. If we go back to the koan, what are the few cloudy days of the present? The situations the leaf went through. The moment it decided to detach, it had to face the wind, the rain, the sun, the river. The river was taking the leaf. The leaf was going aimlessly without any control. So these are the few cloudy days of the present. And here it says the few cloudy days, because again, if we think of our present existence, it's a picture when we compare to the existence of the spirit, which is a movie with all of our different existences, right? So few cloudy days. I can't remember if it was Emmanuel or André Luiz who said that this life is the blink of an eye compared to eternity. So this is why the few cloudy days. When we are in this life going through that suffering, going through those moments, it feels like it's never going to end. It feels like it's forever. Because again, the feeling of suffering makes it feel like it's never going to end. But compared to eternity, it's just a few cloudy days. They will vanish. Therefore, do not ask what is the remedy for ulcers or temptation or trial. And here it's interesting because he mentions two concrete, let's say, things, ulcer and sore, like physical sickness, physical ailments, and then it says temptation or trial. which are also abstract in the sense that you can't see, like you can see a sore, you can't see temptation, you can't see a trial, but again, they are challenges that we go through in our lives. Just like we evolve morally, just like we evolve in intelligence, we evolve in moral. So we face both, concrete and abstract, both sickness or ailments or problems that we can see and some that we can't. And here St. Augustine makes sure to mention both. Remind yourselves that those who believe are strengthened through the remedy of faith. Again, if we go back to the little leaf, the moment the farmer put it close to the trunk in the ground to fertilize the tree, because as we know, nothing is wasted. So as that leaf decomposed, it became nutrients that went through the ground and back to the tree roots. And some of it became a leaf again. At that moment, when the leaf had faith, when the leaf understood and felt that that was the right place, that the leaf was finally back in the koan mentions original plan. Let's say our reincarnation planning. So once the leaf felt it was back in the original plan, once it believed, there was no anxiety, there was no fear, there was no rebellion, there was no, what am I doing here? I don't want to be here, I want to go. It was, the leaf started to patiently wait for the fruit that will come in the spring. And that fruit we can interpret as exercising that patience, exercising the wait for that virtue to build up. The fruit would be the build-up of our own faith, of our own virtue here. Faith, but could be any other. And those who doubt of its sufficiency, be it even for an instant, will be immediately punished, because they will quickly feel the pungent or sharp anguishes of affliction. So when St. Augustine talks about punishment here, he's not talking about an external punishment. When the leaf decided to detach itself, it wasn't punished by the wind, by the river, by the sun. It suffered as a consequence of detaching itself. The wind, the rain, the sun, they are actually necessary. The wind takes the pollen so that other plants can be, forgot the word, pollinized. The rain is necessary, it's water for the root. The sun is absolutely indispensable for photosynthesis, for the plants to grow. So it's not that those elements were punishing the leaf. Those elements are actually for all the plants. It was just the punishment for the leaf through those elements came because the leaf decided to leave the right place. It wasn't the right place. If it had stayed there, all those elements would have been positive for it and not negative. So, like the divine laws, those elements are the divine laws. We are not punished by the divine laws, but the moment we make decisions, we are subjected to them. So the law of freedom will allow me to make any decision. However, I can't detach it from the law of responsibility, take responsibility for the decision I made, and cause and effect. I can't produce a cause and try to cancel the effect. So this punishment here is the elements weren't punishing him. The divine laws don't punish us, but we are subject to them. If we use our free will well, all those elements are going to work in our favor. All those divine laws are going to work in our favor. So it's basically how we use that freedom, how we use that free will. In the Spirit's book, question 922, towards the end of the book, Kardec says, earthly happiness is relative to the position of each person. And here it's a statement. He's affirming this. And what suffices for the happiness of one would be misfortune for another. So this is a statement. Allan Kardec is saying this is how it is. So happiness is relative to the position of each person. Usually, morally speaking, not necessarily materially speaking. But then he says, what suffices for the happiness of one would be misfortune for another. So, how do they say it in English? One man's trash can be another man's treasure, right? So what is enough for me could not be closely enough for Luis, and the other way around. Based on this, then Kardec asks, is there, nevertheless, a common standard, a benchmark of happiness for all? So we understand that happiness means different things to different people, depending on their position. But is there a common standard? Is there something that would be like the starting point for everybody? And the answer, of course, is fantastic as always. The spirits say, for material existence, they separate. They say, for material existence, it is the possession of that is of all that is necessary. Some of us are not happy with just the necessary. But again, Kardec was asking about the benchmark, the basic, a common standard. So if we were in the right place, morally speaking, we would understand that for material existence, it's the possession of all that is necessary. And for the moral life, it is a good conscience and faith in the future. So that would be enough for us to be happy. So all these little things like build up to the influence of faith in our lives. So we started from the lack of faith. So without faith, we face all those difficulties and challenges, the existential emptiness, the existential doubt, existential insecurity, fears, objective or imaginary, fear syndromes, panic, all the kind of stuff, phobias. With faith, like St. Augustine says, it's the remedy, it's the medicine for all of that. Because again, faith in the future, like real, unshakable faith, we don't feel disconnected from God. We know, like the leaf figured out in the end, we know we are in the right place, at the right time, with the right people, in the right conditions to develop and improve what we are supposed to do, what we agreed to before we reincarnated. Going back to the Gospel according to Spiritism, now in chapter 11, item 13, called Faith and Charity, a protecting spirit says, you would be right to affirm that humanity was intended to be happy in this world. As long as this was sought is the past of seek, look for. As long as this was sought, not in material pleasures, but in goodness. Do we connect happiness to how much we have? Or do we connect happiness by how much good we do? Or receive. Not just do, but receive. The history of Christianity tells of martyrs going happily to their execution. And we see that in so many books, like 2,000 years ago, when Livia goes with other Christians and they know they're going to be mauled, eaten by lions, and they are singing, or like St. Augustine says, intoning hymns to God. They are singing to the Lord. So like he says here, they go happily to their execution. Today, and again, let's remember this was written more than 150 years ago. Today, in your society, there's no longer a need for Christians to face the Holocaust of martyrdom. They don't need to be martyrs. We don't need to be martyrs. Nor the sacrifice of lives, but only and exclusively the sacrifice of selfishness, pride, and vanity. You will triumph only if you are inspired by charity and sustained by faith. So inspired by charity, that's when he says in the beginning, goodness. The goodness we try to produce, the goodness we receive. Whatever we do with goodness in our minds to try and influence our environment for the better, and sustained by faith. And again, faith is that feeling of connection to God, not feeling detached, not feeling out of place, not feeling of insecurity. It's that feeling of confidence that I know I'm here to evolve. I know God loves me. I know I'm not abandoned. I know all of that. Luis, may I ask you for a favor?
Yep.
Could you get me Jesus in the home? I totally forgot. I was going to bring it and I forgot. Sorry. Thank you. So here is a picture. I don't know if it's clear for everybody, but this is called a loom, tear, and it's used to make fabric, rugs, all that. So it's a machine, a man-powered machine that we use to weave threads together. Thank you. Weave threads together to come up with a design, but basically to produce some kind of fabric. And the reason why I'm showing this is because we're going to talk about it, but it would make no sense if we don't know what a loom is. So we're going to talk about a weaver. A weaver is a tecelão. Weaver is the person who uses the loom to put the threads together. So faith is like a fabric made in a weaver's loom, with intricate interlaces that contains in itself the energy of many virtues. If we think, if we go back to the loom, if we think of the virtues, as the threads in the loom. So when we weave them, when we put them together, interlace them, faith contains the energy of all those virtues, of love, justice, charity, responsibility, permission, all those laws. So, going back, faith is like a fabric made in a weaver's loom with intricate, like complicated interlaces that contain in itself the energy of many virtues. When we develop these virtues through patient, perseverant, and continuing effort, we strengthen ourselves, allowing us to go towards the big fortress of the Creator's omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. And these are Alírio de Cerqueira Filho's words again in the same book. So here what Alírio is saying is that when we develop the virtues, all the virtues are connected. If we think about developing one virtue at a time, that's not how it works. We talk about virtues individually so that we can comprehend better the bigger picture, but just like in fabric, they are all interlaced, they are all connected. And when we are developing one, we are also developing the others that go closer to that one. So when we develop these virtues through patient, perseverant, and continuing effort, because like I said before, it's not because we believed once that we have unshakable, solid faith. Sometimes in the same existence, sometimes in the next existence, we might do like the pendulum. Even if we believed before, we might start doubting again. So it's an exercise. That's what he says here. Continuous effort, patient, perseverant, don't give up. Only through that exercise that could take us several existences to develop a single virtue, and again, not totally single because they are interconnected. Only through this effort that we are going to strengthen ourselves. We're going to become stronger, little by little, not overnight, allowing us to go towards the big fortress of the Creator's omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. Omnipresence, God is everywhere. Omnipotence, God's power can do everything. And omniscience, God knows everything. I'm going to quickly read a text from Jesus in the Home, Jesus no Lar, about faith that is very close to my heart. Okay, and it's called The Idle Son. Idle means that does nothing. So the son that does nothing. The small group was discussing various problems of faith in God when Jesus began narrating complacently. A great sovereign, soberano, a great sovereign owned vast, big domains. There were countless lands, rivers, plantations, orchards, and herds in his prodigious kingdom. Innumerable subjects served his house in all areas. Some of them never left the Lord's sight for very long. From time to time, they would visit his palace, offering him their service or the flowers of their affection as they received their new schedules for constructive work. Others, however, lived as they saw fit, like we saw the little leaf, in the immense woodlands. They prized their complete freedom with an obvious lack of discipline. They were real troublemakers in the vast empire because instead of helping nature, they spoiled it without mercy. They killed animals for the mere pleasure of hunting. They poisoned the waters to kill mass quantities of fish. They chased after birds or burned the crops of the faithful servants, even though deep down they knew that they should obey the Almighty Lord. One of these thoughtless and idle subjects, however, did not completely disregard his belief in the existence and goodness of the king. After lengthy adventures in the forest to kill defenseless birds, when his belly was already filled to the brim, he would comment on his faith in the rich owner of the vast and valuable realm. So he said, a sovereign as generous as the one who made the waters, lands, trees, and flocks must be very wise and just. He would explain conscientiously, but he tactfully avoided every decree. He intended to live his own way without any rules, not even those of the one that had given him the valley in which he was living his luxurious and happy existence. So here, Jesus is talking about the Lord, the sovereign God that gives everything. And he's talking about two different kinds of subjects. The ones who don't listen, don't want to do anything, and the ones that know the Lord exists, know that He's the one who gives everything, say with their mouths that the Lord is generous, that the Lord is great, but still choose not to follow the rules, and here rules are the divine laws. After a number of years had gone by, when his hands were unable to lift the smallest weapon to harm nature, when his foggy eyes were unable to make out the landscape with the same clarity as when he was young, when his tired and sad body was bent over toward the ground, he decided to seek out the Lord in order to ask for his protection and support. So he knew about the Lord, chose not to follow the rules or the laws, and then when he was too weak to do as he pleased, he decided to look for the Lord for help. He crossed beautiful fields where the loyal, hard-working, and happy servants were cultivating the soil of the immense estate. Finally, he arrived at the illuminated home of the king. He was greatly surprised to find that the guards would not let him in because they couldn't find his name in the book of active servants, and active is the opposite of idle. He implored, begged, and whined. However, one of the guards said, "The king's spare time is set aside for his workers." "What do you mean?" cried the lazy subject. "I have always believed in the sovereignty and kindness of our glorious ruler." But the guard answered without blinking an eye, What good was such a conviction or belief if you avoided the decrees of our sovereign, the divine laws, wasting invaluable time upsetting his works? Your past is alive in your current situation. You're suffering the consequences of your actions. What good did it do to trust in the Lord if you never came to him, offering 1 minute of collaboration on behalf of everyone else? Never did charity, never offered anything, never worked for goodness. So you should see that your belief was merely a way of appeasing your conscience, calming your conscience for the follies of your heart. So we know in our mind, we say we believe it, but it's just an excuse for us to do whatever we want because we believe. And the subject, now compromised by his unworthy deeds, like he was sick, in the poorest of physical health, was forced to begin his task from scratch for his own spiritual renewal. So, reincarnation. Let's go back, start again, and try and do better. The Master, Jesus, fell quiet for a few minutes and then concluded. This is a picture of every idle or inactive child of God. Will any healthy and intelligent persons who believe in the existence of the Eternal Father, who recognize his power, justice, and goodness through the physical expressions of nature, but who do not come to him in simple prayer from time to time, or honor his laws with the smallest gesture of help for their fellow beings, or who do not show the smallest trace of interest in the designs of the great sovereign, will these people be able to collect any reward from their dead, pointless convictions? With this question, which silenced the listeners, the evening's gospel worship came to a close. So belief without actions doesn't mean anything. And I'll leave everybody with Paul's words in the letter to the Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do everything through Him who strengthens me. So we can do everything through God, through faith in God who strengthens us. And that's the influence faith has in our lives. Any comments, questions, anything? No? We're good to go? So, yeah, I am 4 minutes over. So let's do our final prayer. Let's once again elevate our thoughts to the love that God has for us. Let us close our eyes and visualize and feel that love surrounding us at this very moment. Let us feel everything that our loving Father gives us, everything He does for us, everything He provides for us to use in our development, in our evolutionary road. And let us thank our Father for all that. Let us thank our Father for the divine providence that gives us opportunities to practice all those virtues, and as a consequence, follow the laws that He prescribed, not just for us, but for the whole universe. Let us be thankful, even for what seems to be a problem, but it will help us think of a solution, that will help us use our free will to make morally sound decisions. Father, we also ask You for Your enlightenment. We also ask You for Your protection for all of us, for all Your children, mainly for those who have that existential emptiness. May Your light shine on those who still feel detached from You. Let Your protection cloak all of Your children who are sick in hospitals, who are suffering from violence, all those who are mentally unsound. Let Your light shine on our whole planet, in our houses, in our city, in the country of Canada, in Brazil, in the United States that is going through a difficult moment. Let Your light shine over and let us feel the connection to You, to Your infinite and undying love. May we all have a blessed week, a safe week, and may we all remember to connect to You in prayer and feel like we belong, like we are Your children, and that we are loved. Shh.